The Vereen outpost on Kevel 9 was the kind of place the stars forgot. Even light seemed reluctant to land there, swallowed by the iron storms that wrapped the barren planet in a constant gray hum. Lieutenant Kael Orion had been stationed in darker corners before, but never somewhere so utterly devoid of life. He'd been sent here as punishment, stripped of rank, and assigned to logistics, the job every failed soldier ended up doing. His sin was simple. He had refused to bomb a civilian ship when ordered. The court-martial had called it insubordination. His conscience called it survival. The humans had lost too much already. Now he lived among the Vereen, towering, bone-pale creatures whose translucent skin shimmered with internal light. They viewed humans as primitive, emotional, weak. They spoke in tones like glass singing, and when Kael answered, they flinched at the roughness of his voice. He'd stopped trying to speak at all. He was invisible here, a punished relic of a dying race. He moved through the dim corridors, checking crates, inventory lists, ration counts. The hum of machinery was constant, almost like a whisper beneath the walls. On his second week, during a late-night inspection, he noticed a sealed door tucked behind the medical bay. It wasn't on the blueprint. The padlock was foreign, organic, breathing faintly. He leaned closer and heard something behind it. Not the usual static hum of machines. A voice. It was faint at first, more vibration than sound. Then it came again, soft, unsure. Is someone there? Kael froze. His pulse jumped. No one should be inside a sealed chamber like that. He glanced down the hallway. The medical ward was empty. The Vereen doctors didn't work this late. I heard you, the voice whispered again. Your sound is strange. Heavy. He hesitated, running his gloved fingers along the organic padlock. The material pulsed once under his touch, recognizing his warmth. The door hissed open just slightly, enough for the stale, metallic air to seep through. Inside, faint light flickered like underwater fire. Who's there? Kael said quietly. Don't speak too loud, the voice replied. They don't like when I listen. He stepped in and the door sealed behind him. The room was small, filled with machines that pulsed with soft bioelectric rhythms. A single containment pod sat in the center, wrapped in translucent cables. Within it, half-curled, was a girl. She wasn't human. Her skin shimmered faintly violet, and fine bioluminescent threads ran beneath her surface like veins of starlight. Her eyes were closed, and yet she turned her face toward him as though she could see. Who are you? Kael asked. I'm called Lyra, she said. You're human. Her voice trembled on that last word, as if tasting something rare. You shouldn't be here, Kael said. This section's restricted. I know, she whispered, but I heard you. You walk differently. You breathe louder. You feel louder. He frowned. Feel? Her hand lifted slowly, trembling as it hovered near the glass of her containment pod. The air changes when you're near. Most of them sound like metal scraping. You sound like fire. Kael took an involuntary step closer. The lights above flickered, reacting to some unseen pulse. The machines behind her hummed softly, and for a moment he thought he saw faint waves in the air between them, like sound turned visible. What did they do to you? He asked. They tried to fix me, she said, her smile fragile. I was born broken. I can't see light, not the way others do. But I can hear it. Every color has a sound. Every emotion has a pulse. When they realized I could sense feelings, they wanted to measure them, record them. They said I was useful then. Her voice dropped. Then they said I wasn't. Too unstable. Kael's throat tightened. He'd seen enough Vereen cruelty to know what unstable meant. Disposal. Experimentation. Silence. He stepped closer. Why are you still alive? I don't know, she said simply. Maybe they forgot about me. Maybe they keep me to remind others what happens when you're born wrong. She tilted her head, sensing the air shift as he exhaled. You're angry, she murmured. Your sound spikes when you lie to yourself. Kael blinked. I didn't say anything. I know, but you thought it. Her fingers pressed to the glass. Would you let me touch your hand? Kael hesitated. Why? I want to hear you properly. Something about her tone, innocent, unafraid, made him lower his guard. He pressed his hand to the glass. A faint vibration spread through the barrier, humming low. Then, impossibly, she felt it. Her palm met his through the divide, and for a moment, the hum turned into something alive. She gasped softly. You sound beautiful. He withdrew his hand as if burned. The machines around them flickered, reacting to her heightened neural output. Kael backed away. I don't know what they've done to you, but you shouldn't. Please, she interrupted, her voice fragile as glass. Don't tell them you found me. They'll end it if they know someone came. Kael froze near the door. He should have reported this immediately. A contained subject speaking to a human? That was a violation that could cost him his remaining freedom or worse. But when he looked at her again, she wasn't a lab mistake. She was just a girl, alone, scared, listening for anything human in a place that had forgotten what that meant. He turned to leave. I was never here. The door hissed open, light spilling into the hall. Before he stepped out, her voice came again, soft, barely audible. Your sound lingers, Kael Orion, like dawn trying to survive the night. He paused, heart caught somewhere between guilt and wonder. How do you know my name? I heard it, she said, smiling faintly. From the way the walls remember your footsteps. He left without replying, but her words clung to him like dust on old metal. He lay awake that night in his narrow bunk, staring at the ceiling as the hum of the bass pressed against his skull. Every vibration felt different now, like the outpost itself had learned to breathe. He tried to convince himself it was nothing, a malfunction, a hallucination, maybe a trick. But the sound of her voice wouldn't fade. It echoed behind his thoughts, weaving through his heartbeat. The next day, he found himself walking the same corridor again, pretending to check power conduits. The sealed door was silent this time, still breathing faintly. He told himself he wouldn't open it. He just wanted to listen. But as he stood there, he felt something. A faint tremor in the floor, rhythmic and delicate. A heartbeat. Her heartbeat. Kael, her voice whispered through the wall, clear as thought. Why do you keep pretending you don't care? He pressed his palm against the cold surface, and for a fleeting second, warmth pulsed beneath it. Alive, fragile, and searching. He didn't answer. He couldn't, because the truth terrified him. For the first time in months, someone had heard him. Not his words, not his rank, but the noise of his soul. That night, when the lights dimmed across the outpost, he sat alone in his quarters, staring at his reflection in the metal window. The storms outside flickered with lightning, tracing patterns across the dark horizon. And in every pulse, he thought he heard her again, whispering softly between the thunder. You sound beautiful. The storms outside the outpost never rested. They rolled like distant waves against metal skies, muffling every sound in a ceaseless hum that mirrored Kael Orion's own unrest. He tried to ignore the girl's voice, told himself she was just an anomaly, a fragment of guilt-given sound. But her words had lodged deep, whispering behind every breath he took. He'd only heard her twice, yet she had become the gravity around which his thoughts turned. 2 days passed before he learned the truth, or part of it. While updating supply manifests, Kael accessed a restricted list of medical designations. One file was sealed under the tag Project Lumen, Verine Human Integration Series, subject #47L. The notation beneath it chilled him. Condition: failed hybridization. Recommended disposal. Human integration. He read it twice. That was forbidden research. The Verine had outlawed human genetic merging after the treaty wars. Too unpredictable, too primitive. But here, buried in a forgotten facility, they'd kept testing. And the blind girl he'd found wasn't just some rejected patient. She was proof they'd been playing God again. Kael sat back, the dim console light flickering over his face. A failed hybrid, half-human, half-Verine. He thought of her voice, how she'd sensed his heartbeat, how she'd known his name. Maybe that was why she could hear him differently. She wasn't fully one of them. She wasn't fully anyone. That night, he couldn't help himself. He took a detour on his patrol route, stopping once more outside the sealed medical chamber. The corridor was dark, quiet except for the hum of the energy veins that ran along the walls. He stood there for a long moment, hand hovering over the panel. "I told myself I wouldn't come back," he muttered. "Then why are you here?" The answer came before he touched the door. Her voice was faint but unmistakable, carrying through the wall like vibration through glass. Kael swallowed hard. "Routine inspection," he lied. "You're lying," she said, not unkindly. "I can feel it. When you lie, the air bends differently." He exhaled sharply. "You're not supposed to talk to me. Or anyone." "Then don't answer," she whispered. "Just stay." The door unlocked with a soft hiss, the organic latch relaxing as though it remembered him. The light inside was gentler this time, the machines slower in their pulse, like a heartbeat lulled into calm. She sat upright in her pod, her pale hands resting on the edge of the glass. "You look tired," she said. He frowned. "You can't see." "I can feel it," she said simply. "Your energy moves slower, sadder." He tried to focus on his datapad, pretending to scan readouts, but her voice cut through the silence again. "Why did they send you here, Kael Orion?" He looked up. "You really can feel everything, can't you?" "I can feel truth," she said softly. "It sounds warm. Lies are sharp and cold." He almost smiled at that. "Then this place must sound like winter to you." Her head tilted slightly, the faint bioluminescent veins across her skin pulsing in rhythm with his words. "It did," she murmured. "Until you came." Kael looked away quickly, his jaw tightening. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why?" she asked. "Because you're human? Or because I'm not?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. Something about the innocence in her tone cut deeper than any insult. She spoke like someone who didn't know what she wasn't allowed to feel. He changed the subject. "Project Lumen. That's what they called it, right? What were they trying to do to you?" Her hands tightened slightly on the glass. "They said they wanted to fix us. The Varine can see light, but they can't feel it. They envy humans for that. They think emotion is a kind of sense they lost long ago. They tried to take it back. They thought if they mixed human DNA with Varine essence, they could learn to feel again." Her lips trembled, though her eyes remained still. "But I felt too much. The doctors said I was defective. They said I let too much pain in." Kael stared at her, the edges of his anger softening into something he didn't want to name. "You weren't defective," he said quietly. "They just didn't know what to do with something human." She smiled faintly. "You sound angry again." "Angry feels red." Kael blinked. "Red? I told you, emotions have colors. Yours burn. They're loud and alive. I wish I could see them." He found himself stepping closer, lowering his voice. "And what do you hear when you listen to the others?" "Cold colors," she whispered. "Blue, gray, empty tones. They think they're perfect, but they're hollow inside. You're not." Before he could respond, the door behind him slid open. Kael turned sharply. A towering Varine officer entered, his armor gleaming like wet glass. Commander Varn. His expression was calm, almost serene, but Kael knew that look. The kind Varine wore before delivering a warning that wasn't a threat, but a promise. "Lieutenant Orion," Varn said smoothly, "you've taken an unusual interest in our medical bay." Kael stiffened. "Routine security inspection, sir. I was verifying containment protocols." "Were you?" Varn's gaze slid to Lyra's pod. The girl lowered her head, her hands folding in her lap. "The human military breeds curiosity. It's inefficient." Kael clenched his jaw but said nothing. Varn stepped closer, his height towering over him. "This subject is property of the Varine Science Division. She is not your concern. You will not speak to her again. You will not enter this chamber again. Do you understand?" Kael met his gaze. "Yes, Commander." Varn's tone softened. "Good. Because if I hear otherwise, Lieutenant, I will ensure that both you and the subject are silenced." The penalty for human contact with experimental entities is execution. For both parties. He turned and left without another word, the sound of his footsteps echoing long after the door closed. The silence that followed was suffocating. Kael turned back to Lyra, who sat motionless, her hands pressed together as if in prayer. "Is he gone?" she asked. "Yes," she exhaled shakily. "He hates sound. When he speaks, the room dies. I can't hear anything when he's near. It's like drowning." Kael rubbed his temple. "You need to rest. I shouldn't have come." "You'll come again," she said softly. He looked at her sharply. "How can you be so sure?" "Because you're lonely," she said simply. "And so am I." Her honesty made something inside him falter. He didn't reply this time. He left quickly, before the silence between them grew too fragile to break. Hours later, the alarms blared through the outpost. Kael jolted upright from his bunk as red emergency lights painted the metal walls. The comm crackled. "Medical containment breach. Sector 12. Termination protocol in progress. Sector 12. Lyra." He didn't think. He didn't dress. He just ran. The corridors blurred around him as sirens wailed. When he reached the medical wing, the hall was empty. Most Vereen avoided direct contact during termination cycles. The air smelled of ozone and fear. He slammed his hand against the chamber door. Locked. Inside, faint blue light flickered erratically. Her pod was convulsing, tendrils of energy crawling along its sides. The life support feed was draining fast. "Override command, Orion Human Division," he shouted into the console. It didn't recognize him. He cursed, drew his sidearm, and fired into the control node. Sparks exploded, and the lock disengaged. The room was a storm of light. The containment pod's walls pulsed like a dying heartbeat. Lyra was convulsing, her breathing ragged, her body shaking beneath the restraints. Kael sprinted to the console, slamming switches until the drains halted. "Come on! Come on!" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Kael! They're ending me!" He reached through the mist of leaking coolant, pulling the release lever. The pod hissed open, spilling her into his arms. Her skin was cold but still alive, the faint glow beneath it flickering weakly. "Stay with me," he said. Her lips moved faintly. "I heard you coming. Your sound was bright." "Don't talk," he muttered, cradling her as the lights flickered. "I've got you." The intercom crackled again. Varn's voice, smooth and cold. "Lieutenant Orion, stand down. That subject is marked for disposal. Return to quarters immediately." Kael looked at the unconscious girl in his arms, then at the security cameras overhead. He knew what defying orders meant. He'd already paid for it once. He tightened his grip around her fragile frame. Not this time. And before the lockdown could seal, he ran down the corridor, through the emergency gates, deeper into the bowels of the outpost where even the stars couldn't hear them. Behind him, Varn's voice echoed through the speakers. "Human emotion will be your undoing, Orion." Kael didn't answer, because somewhere against his chest, a faint heartbeat pulsed in rhythm with his own. And that, more than anything, sounded like life. The tunnels breathed like a living organism. Pipes groaned, steam hissed, and faint vibrations carried whispers from above. Kael's boots splashed through shallow water, his breath clouding the dim blue light of his wrist beacon. Behind him, Lyra stumbled, one hand pressed to the cold wall, the other gripping the hem of his jacket like it was her only anchor to reality. She couldn't see, but she didn't need to. Every sound, every vibration, every shift in air pressure painted a world only she could feel. He stopped at an intersection and turned to her. "We can't stay here long. Patrols sweep this section every hour." Her voice trembled, soft but resolute. "I know. I can feel them above. Their steps sound sharp, angry." Kael tilted his head, scanning the shadows. "You can feel footsteps?" "Not just footsteps," she said, her blind eyes reflecting the faint glow from his wrist. "Emotions echo differently. The ones chasing us, they don't feel fear, only obedience." He studied her, still struggling to understand how she could describe feelings as if they were textures. When she spoke, it wasn't metaphor, it was literal perception. "Lyra," he whispered, crouching beside her. "What do you see? When you touch people?" She hesitated, fingers brushing the air like she was tracing invisible threads. "I see light and sound, not from their eyes or mouths, but from inside them. Souls shimmer. They hum. But yours—" She reached forward, her trembling hand brushing his sleeve. "Yours burns. Loud. Like fire that refuses to die." Kael swallowed hard, unsure if she was speaking poetry or truth, but something in her tone, reverent, frightened, made him believe her. He helped her to sit on a crate and handed her a ration bar. She tilted her head curiously, feeling the shape of it before tasting. "It's dry," she murmured, smiling faintly. "Like your voice when you lie." That caught him off guard. "What? You said we'd be safe," she said quietly. "But your voice crackled. You didn't believe it." Kael stared at her. He wanted to deny it, to insist he was confident, in control, but the truth was he wasn't. Every second they spent together put them both in danger. If Commander Varn found them, they'd both be executed without question. He looked away. "You can really feel when someone lies?" Her expression softened, and she nodded. "Lies. They hurt my head. They sound like broken glass. I wish I couldn't." A memory clawed its way into his mind, his own broken glass moment. He saw a planet burning under twin moons, civilians running through smoke. His unit's comms screamed retreat, but he'd stayed behind, pulling crying children from collapsed shelters. He'd disobeyed direct orders to save them. For that, he was branded emotionally unstable and reassigned to this forsaken outpost. He could still hear their screams, and the cold voice of command stripping him of rank and dignity. Now, sitting in the dark beside a blind alien girl whose own people abandoned her, he felt that same ache of defiance stir again. Lyra tilted her head, sensing his silence change. "You're remembering something painful." He met her blank gaze. "You shouldn't be able to know that." "I don't need eyes to see pain," she whispered. "It vibrates louder than anything else." He almost smiled. "Then I must be deafening." "You're loud," she said softly, reaching out again, fingertips brushing his jawline. "But not broken." Her touch was featherlight, but the warmth of it ran through him like static. He hadn't realized how starved he was for something so simple, for someone to reach out without judgment or command, for someone to feel him, not just see the uniform. "Why are you helping me?" she asked suddenly, lowering her hand. "You don't owe me anything." Kael exhaled slowly. "Because I can't watch another innocent die while I follow orders. Not again." For a long moment, the tunnel was silent except for the hum of the generators above. Lyra leaned closer, her head tilted as though listening to something only she could hear. "What?" Kael asked quietly. "You're different," she said. "Most humans I've met sound gray, quiet inside, like they've given up. But you sound alive. And your fire hums in color. It's orange." He laughed softly, shaking his head. "You really do see emotions as color, don't you?" she asked, tilting her head. He didn't answer. The sound of approaching boots made him freeze. He pulled her behind a pile of crates, hand covering her mouth instinctively. Two Varine guards passed overhead, their voices echoing through the grates. "Command wants the hybrid terminated by dawn," one said. The humans' interference delayed the process. Kael's jaw tightened. He waited until their footsteps faded before lowering his hand. "We need to move." Lyra nodded. "Where will we go?" "Off-world, if we can. There's a cargo shuttle in Bay 9, if we can reach it before sunrise." She hesitated. "Kael, why are they afraid of me?" He didn't answer right away. How could he explain that she wasn't just an accident? That the Varine had tried to graft human sensory genes onto her kind, hoping to create soldiers who could perceive emotion in battle, but instead, they made her blind, empathetic, and uncontrollable. "They don't understand you," he said simply. "Do you?" she asked, her voice trembling. He looked at her for a long time. No, but I want to. They moved through the tunnels again, slower this time. Kael's flashlight flickered as the power grid above fluctuated. Lyra's hand never left his arm. Her steps matched his heartbeat. Somewhere in the distance, alarms wailed again. They've noticed the missing subject, Kael muttered. Then we run, she said, tightening her grip. They sprinted through the dark, his pulse pounding, her breath ragged but steady. When they reached a ladder leading up to the old maintenance ducts, she stopped, hand pressed to the metal wall. Wait, she whispered. There's something ahead. Not soldiers. A sound. Kael frowned, listening, but heard nothing. It's not a sound you can hear, she said softly. It's alive, angry. The same tone I felt when they cut me open. Kael's stomach twisted. A drone sentinel. We'll have to disable it. She turned her face toward him, eyes clouded with white mist. Kael, if you die, your fire will go out. I don't want that. Then don't let go, he said. We'll get through this together. They climbed. Above them, the sound of humming servos grew louder. Kael drew his sidearm, set it to low-power stun. As the drone's red sensor light swept across the tunnel, he lunged, firing once. Sparks burst. The machine screamed and fell into darkness. He reached the hatch and pried it open, the cold night air rushing in. Stars glimmered beyond the dome of the outpost, endless and distant. Lyra crawled up beside him, her hair catching the starlight like silver threads. She gasped softly. It sounds beautiful. What does? He asked. The sky, she whispered. It sings like hope. Kael watched her face, illuminated by the stars she couldn't see. And for the first time since his exile, he felt something shift inside him. Something fragile and dangerous. Hope. But before he could speak, a metallic voice echoed from the comms in his ear. Lieutenant Orion, you are charged with treason under Article 47. Stand down immediately. It was Commander Varn. Kael looked at Lyra, her blind eyes wide, trembling. He turned off the comm. We keep moving. Kael, she whispered. What color does fear sound like? He met her hand halfway, their fingers brushing. Right now, it sounds like fire trying to survive the rain. And as the sirens blared in the distance, they ran into the darkness. Two fugitives bound by sound, light, and something neither could yet name. But in the control room above, Commander Varn watched their movements through thermal scans and smiled coldly. Let him burn, he murmured. The experiment's only just begun. The storm outside the outpost mirrored the one inside Kael's mind. Metallic thunder and restless winds pounding the domes of Varine Station 7. He crouched in the shadow of an abandoned hangar, fingers working through a pile of salvaged tech. Human neural adapters, obsolete vibration sensors, fragments of holographic glass. The air smelled of rust and ozone. Across from him, Lyra sat cross-legged on the floor, head tilted toward the sound of his movements, her pale eyes unblinking. What are you building? She asked softly. Kael glanced up, the faint light from a cracked lamp casting his features in blue. Something that shouldn't exist. Something to help you see. Her lips parted in disbelief. You mean sight? Actual sight. He nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. Maybe not like mine, but something close. The Varine sensors translate vibration into energy signatures. Human tech can interpret those frequencies as light. If I can merge the two. He trailed off, voice tight with concentration. You might be able to visualize the world through sound. Lyra tilted her head, her expression unreadable. You'd risk everything for that? Kael gave a faint smile. You risked everything just by existing. He soldered two circuits together, sparks lighting the dark room. The small device began to hum, a fragile, trembling sound that vibrated through the air. Lyra flinched. It's alive, she whispered. Not yet, Kael said. Come here. She crawled closer, hands brushing the floor until they found his. He guided her fingers to the cold metal frame, a thin headset lined with transparent fibers. It's crude, he said, his voice trembling slightly. It'll connect to your auditory nerves and map the sound waves to visual data. It might hurt. She smiled faintly. I've lived with pain all my life, but I've never seen light. Kael hesitated, staring at her delicate face, the scars along her temples from old experiments. Then he took a slow breath and gently placed the device around her head. The instant it connected, Lyra gasped, a sound that pierced the silence like a bell. Her body tensed, eyes wide, breath quickening. Kael, she whispered. What is this? He knelt before her, voice low. Tell me what you see. Tears welled in her eyes as a soft, shimmering glow reflected off her irises. The neural filaments pulsed faintly, turning her tears blue as they slid down her cheeks. It's light. It's everywhere. It hums and dances. The air, the metal, even you. She reached out, trembling. You're made of color. Kael swallowed hard, unable to look away. What color? Fire, she said. Your fire wrapped in flesh. Her fingers brushed his chest, and for a moment he forgot how to breathe. She was smiling, eyes glimmering with unfiltered awe, the faint hum of the sensory rig illuminating her face. You gave me the stars, she whispered. You're my anchor to them. Kael couldn't find words. He reached up, brushing his thumb against her glowing tear. You've had the stars in you all along, Lyra. I just helped you see them. They stayed like that, lost in the quiet hum of shared wonder, until the first sound of boots shattered the moment. Kael's head snapped toward the door. Stay back, he hissed, pulling his weapon. The hangar doors burst open, floodlights cutting through the dark. Commander Varn strode in, flanked by armed Varine guards. Lieutenant Orion, he said coldly. Your defiance finally outshines your usefulness. Lyra flinched at the sharp vibration of his voice. Kael, she whispered, clutching the rig. Varn's eyes narrowed on her. And the hybrid lives. You were ordered to terminate the subject, not assist it. Kael aimed his blaster, but Varn only smiled. Don't be foolish. You know how this ends. Two guards stepped forward, wrenching the weapon from his hands. Kael struggled, shouting, She's not an experiment. She's alive. Varn's voice was a blade. She's a malfunction, Orion. And you're a traitor. The soldiers pinned Kael to the floor. One tore the rig from Lyra's head. She screamed, clutching her temples as blue light flickered violently. Stop, Kael roared. You'll kill her. Varn leaned down, his cold gaze meeting Kael's. You already did. The butt of a rifle struck Kael's temple, and the world went black. When he woke, his wrists were bound to a steel chair. The interrogation chamber was sterile, humming with electric restraint fields. Outside the glass partition, Varn's voice echoed. Lieutenant Kael Orion, guilty of aiding a hybrid subject, violating species protocol, and conspiring against Varine command. Sentence: execution at dawn. Kael lifted his head, blood drying on his face. Where is she? Disposed of, Varn lied. Mercy you didn't deserve. Kael's throat tightened, fury rising in him like wildfire. You don't even understand what she is. She could see what none of you can. She could feel life. Varn only smirked. Blind sentiment. How human. Kael's laughter was hollow. You'll never kill what she is. As the guards dragged him toward the holding cell, a faint tremor ran through the facility. Lights flickered. The intercom crackled once, then again. Varn frowned. What's? Static filled the room, then a familiar voice, soft, trembling, ethereal, cut through the noise. Kael. Every head turned toward the ceiling. I can see you. Kael froze, his heart lurching. Varn's expression twisted in confusion. Impossible. But Lyra's voice grew stronger, echoing through every corridor, every comm channel, every screen. You're surrounded by colors I've never seen before. Fear, hate, lies. They're choking you. The lights pulsed in rhythm with her words. On the monitors, energy readings spiked. Kael's eyes widened. She'd activated the rig again, remotely using the damaged neural link. She was alive. Outside, the night sky rippled with a faint blue shimmer, like auroras forming from within the dome. Varn slammed his hand on the console. "Cut the transmission." The technician shook his head. "Sir, it's not connected to any known frequency. It's coming from inside the sensory field." Lyra's voice trembled, rising into something both beautiful and terrifying. "You tried to blind me, but now I see everything." Kael's lips parted. "Lyra, stop. You'll burn yourself out." Static swallowed her voice for a heartbeat, then returned, softer this time. "I'll find you, Kael. I can see the fire." And then the lights went out, every system plunging into darkness. Kael sat in the silence, heart pounding, breath shaking. Somewhere in the black void, he could almost feel her reaching for him through the colorless dark. The storm outside raged harder, lightning painting the sky in shades of blue only one being could truly see. And in the deepest part of the base, Lyra stumbled through the corridors, her damaged rig flickering wildly, her body trembling as light and emotion bled into one chaotic symphony. She whispered into the dark, voice cracking with both terror and hope. "Hold on, Kael. I can see you." The base was chaos. Alarms shrieking, red lights pulsing, soldiers shouting orders over the intercoms. The storm outside had cracked the outer dome, sending shards of glass and freezing wind through the corridors. In the confusion, no one noticed the door to cell block 9 slide open. No one saw the pale figure step through, her movements uncertain yet purposeful, the glow from her shattered sensory rig flickering against her temple. Lyra's steps were soundless. Her eyes, though open, no longer saw even the faintest light. The overload had burned out her neural sensors entirely. But she didn't need them anymore. The air itself was alive to her. The hum of every energy field, every heartbeat, every frightened soul around her sang like music in her mind. She walked through darkness, guided not by sight but by emotion. Fear was dull gray. Anger burned red. Kael's fire. It was still out there, bright and stubborn, refusing to die. She followed it, down 2 levels past the generator core, into the detention wing where metallic restraints buzzed against his wrists. Kael sat slumped in his chair, bruised and silent, the echo of Varn's sentence still ringing in his ears. When the door hissed open, he lifted his head, expecting guards. Instead, he heard the soft rhythm of bare feet. "Kael!" His heart stopped. "Lyra?" She stepped into the cell, the faint blue glow from her damaged rig casting ghostly patterns on her skin. She looked fragile, too fragile, but there was a strength in her posture he'd never seen before. "You're supposed to be dead," he breathed. "I was," she said simply. "Then I saw you." He stared at her, disbelief breaking into something else, something raw and desperate. "You can't see anything." "I don't need eyes," she whispered, stepping closer. "Your soul lights the way." Before he could answer, she placed her hand on the cell door. The metal shimmered under her touch, the locking mechanism whining before snapping open. Sparks showered as the field collapsed. Kael stood, stunned. "How?" "The rig," she said faintly, touching her temple. "It's breaking me apart, but it connects everything now. Machines, people, souls." He didn't understand half of it, but he didn't care. He grabbed her arm, supporting her trembling weight. "We're leaving. Now." They sprinted down the hall as the base shook with internal detonations. Automatic lockdown protocols malfunctioning from the overload she'd triggered earlier. Soldiers shouted behind them, but she raised a hand, her voice calm and eerie. "They can't see us," she murmured. "Their fear blinds them." Kael didn't question it. He guided her through the smoke-filled hangar, past burning debris. A shuttle waited, an old cargo transport, partially fueled. He punched in override codes while she leaned against the bulkhead, her breathing uneven. When the engines roared to life, Lyra smiled weakly. "It sounds beautiful." Kael helped her into the co-pilot's seat. "Hold on. This thing's barely flight-worthy." The shuttle blasted off, tearing through the storm and into the void. Plasma fire chased them, bright streaks cutting across the black sky. Kael maneuvered hard, diving into the asteroid belt. The rocks spun around them like ancient gods watching silently. Inside, everything was chaos. Alarms blaring, oxygen flickering, gravity stuttering. But for the first time, Kael felt something he hadn't in months. Freedom. When the immediate danger passed, he turned to her. "We made it," he said, voice breathless with relief. Lyra didn't respond. Her head was tilted back, her face pale, lips trembling. Lyra, her pulse was weak. The blue light from her rig dimmed. "No, no, stay with me," Kael said, unbuckling and kneeling beside her. He grabbed a med scanner from the emergency kit, pressing it against her neck. The readings flickered erratically, two distinct neural frequencies fighting for dominance. "What the hell?" he muttered. From the back of the shuttle, the medic, an older human named Rael, a deserter Kael had freed during the chaos, hurried forward. "Move aside." Kael did, watching as Rael scanned her vitals. His expression went rigid. She's not fully Vereen." Kael frowned. "What do you mean?" Rael adjusted the scanner, jaw tightening. Her genome split. Human and Vereen sequences interwoven. Someone used hybrid coding in her creation. Kael froze. "That's impossible. The Vereen outlawed cross-species genetics decades ago." Rael looked up, grim. "Then she's their greatest secret. The first of her kind. A living bridge between us." Kael's breath caught. "Lyra." Her eyes fluttered open, unseeing but focused on his voice. "I heard you," she whispered. "Don't talk," he said quickly. "Save your strength." She smiled faintly. "You always sound like thunder when you're scared." He took her hand, pressing it to his chest. "You'll be fine. We'll find a place to land. Get you help." She shook her head slowly. "Kael, my world is fading. I can't see the colors anymore." His throat tightened. "You said you didn't need to see." "I don't," she whispered, tears slipping from her blank eyes. "Because you're the only one I can still see." The words hit him like a physical blow. Her fingers traced his cheek, trembling. "You burned so bright in my darkness. Don't let that fire die." He held her tighter, feeling the cold seep into her skin. "Lyra, please." The medic looked up, shaking his head. "Her neural frequencies are syncing with yours. She's trying to anchor herself through your energy signature." Kael gritted his teeth. "Then tell me how to help her." "You can't," Rael said quietly. "If her hybrid system stabilizes, she might survive. But she's burning through her own life force to keep connected." The shuttle rattled violently as they passed through a cluster of asteroids. Kael steadied her head, his forehead pressed against hers. "You listen to me," he whispered. "You're not dying on me, Lyra. Not after everything." Her breath came in shallow waves. "Kael." "What? Do you remember the first thing I ever said to you?" He swallowed hard. "You said I sounded beautiful." Her faint smile broke his heart. "You still do." The blue light flickered again, dimming to almost nothing. Kael's voice cracked. "Stay with me, please." But her breathing slowed, and the last traces of blue shimmer faded from her tears. Outside, the asteroids parted for a moment, revealing the stars. Kael held her in his arms, her head resting against his chest. He could still feel the faint warmth of her skin, the echo of her heartbeat syncing with his. Then silence. The ship drifted quietly, the stars reflecting off the viewport like candles in a cathedral. Kael's voice broke the stillness, hoarse and shaking. "You were never blind, Lyra. You saw what no one else could." Her fingers twitched once, a whisper of life. And in the silence that followed, a faint hum filled the cockpit, the same tone that had once come from her rig, pulsed in time with his heartbeat. Kael froze. "Lyra?" No answer. But somewhere deep within the ship systems, the interface flickered, new data lines, alien and human code intertwined. Her consciousness had not vanished. It had moved, and Kael, eyes wet and breath trembling, whispered into the quiet, "You're still here, aren't you?" The hum deepened, soft and steady. He smiled through the tears. "Then we're not done yet." Outside, The stars shifted, like something unseen had just opened its eyes. The rebel ship hung in the silence between two dying worlds, its hull scarred by plasma burns, its engines whispering the fatigue of constant flight. Kael stood at the observation deck, watching the distant glimmer of a planet swallowed by Vereen bombardment. The resistance was losing. Every day another outpost fell. Every night he dreamt of the girl who could hear light. Behind him, a soft hum filled the corridor, the same delicate resonance that always preceded her arrival. "You're watching them burn again," Lyra said quietly. Her pale silver hair shimmered faintly under the emergency lights. The sensory rig she wore now was patched with human circuits, glowing faintly with each of her breaths. "I can feel the sadness coming off you. It's loud tonight." Kael turned, managing a tired smile. "You shouldn't be up. Your neural readings are my problem," she interrupted gently, but there was no edge in her tone, only quiet strength. "You think I can't hear how scared you are? Every time the comm beeps, your heart changes color." He walked closer, his hand brushing the rig's control pad on her arm, lowering its intensity. "You shouldn't push yourself, Lyra. You're not just hearing the world anymore. You're absorbing it." She tilted her head, as if listening to something distant. "The world doesn't stop being loud because I close my ears, Kael. The Vereen are lying to someone. I can hear it in their broadcast patterns. They're planning something near Vega Prime." Her words made his chest tighten. He'd been avoiding the topic, afraid she'd already sensed it. The Resistance had intercepted strange Vereen transmissions, patterns too intricate to decode, pulsing with human undertones. A hybrid language. "We'll handle it," he said softly, but she frowned. "You don't believe that," she whispered. "Your soul flickers when you lie." 2 days later, the Resistance Council convened aboard the rebel flagship Horizon's End. Dozens of alien defectors and human officers filled the dimly lit chamber, tension hanging thick as gravity. Lyra stood behind Kael, her hood drawn low, sensory rig dimmed to near invisibility. Commander Avon, an older human scarred from the early wars, slammed his fist against the table. "We can't keep hiding. We strike Vega Prime before they rebuild their fleet." Across the table, a reptilian envoy hissed, "If you strike now, you doom every colony still holding out." The shouting grew until Lyra whispered something that silenced Kael's pulse. "Someone here isn't real." He turned slightly, meeting her unblinking eyes. "What do you mean?" he murmured. Her voice trembled. "One of them doesn't have a soul color. It's hollow." Kael's gaze swept the room, then froze. Commander Varn stood among them. Older, colder, the same officer who once ordered Lyra's death. "You," Kael hissed, hand instinctively on his weapon. But before anyone could react, the walls flashed white. The blast threw them across the chamber, a roaring inferno devouring air and light. Kael woke buried under debris, his ears ringing, lungs burning. Flames crawled up the conference walls. He dragged himself toward the motionless form beside him, Lyra, unconscious, blood trickling from her temple. He tore the remains of his jacket, pressing it to her wound, whispering her name over and over until her eyes fluttered open. "I saw it," she gasped. He wasn't Vereen. He was empty, a copy. Kael's heart raced. "A clone." She nodded weakly. "No. Worse. They're using human echoes, souls copied through resonance fields. That's what the experiments were for." The revelation shattered something inside him. The Vereen hadn't just enslaved humans. They'd been replicating them, mimicking souls. As smoke filled the room, Kael lifted her in his arms, pushing through collapsing corridors until they reached the evacuation pods. The Council's leadership was gone. Half the resistance wiped out in a single strike. And yet, Lyra clung to him, whispering in the dark. "They wanted to silence me because I saw too much." Her words haunted him through the night, echoing like prophecy. When the ship's engines roared to life, Kael turned to her. "You think they're afraid of your power?" She nodded faintly, her eyes distant. "No, I'm not afraid. Terrified. Because I can hear the truth they buried inside themselves." She touched his chest, her hand trembling. And, Kael, I heard something inside you too. Something that doesn't belong. His blood froze. What do you mean? Her lips parted, but no words came. Only the hum of the sensory rig spiking into static. Outside, the stars stretched into light as the shuttle entered warp. But Kael couldn't shake her final look. Half fear, half wonder. As if she'd seen something inside him that even he didn't understand. Something human, and something not. The derelict station drifted like a tomb in the cold stretch between dying suns. Its architecture was alien. Curved walls etched with symbols that pulsed faintly, as if remembering the hands that once built them. Kael guided their small shuttle through the fractured docking ring, every sensor flickering with interference. Lyra stood behind him, her fingers pressed against the hull, listening to the metal's vibration. It's singing, she whispered, eyes half closed. Old voices. They've been waiting. Kael swallowed hard, keeping his voice steady. Waiting for what? Her answer came like a tremor. For someone to look into the light again. They entered the station's interior, dustless, yet ancient. Energy hummed deep within, faintly alive. Every step echoed like a heartbeat in hollow corridors. Lyra's sensory rig flickered erratically, her perception overwhelmed by the dense resonance of forgotten minds. Kael, she murmured, gripping his sleeve. There are so many colors here, not just souls, memories. He steadied her, trying not to show his own unease. The air smelled of ozone and decay, yet the walls glowed with veins of crystalline blue. Symbols lit up as they passed, responding to her presence. It's reading you, Kael said, like it knows who you are. She tilted her head. No, it knows what I am. Deeper inside, they reached a massive chamber. At its center floated the soul mirror, a circular frame of radiant crystal, suspended in midair by invisible forces. The surface rippled like liquid light, reflecting not appearance but essence. When Kael stepped closer, his reflection fractured, shifting into a dozen versions of himself. Soldier, child, traitor, savior. He flinched back, breath unsteady. What the hell is this thing? He whispered. Lyra moved toward it with reverence. It's not a mirror, she said softly. It's memory condensed, a window into what we were. Before Kael could stop her, she reached out. The chamber erupted in a cascade of color, beams of living light wrapping around her form, pulling strands of her consciousness into the mirror. Kael's vision blurred. Suddenly, he saw through her eyes, flashes of Earth long before war, oceans glittering, cities breathing under golden skies, humans laughing, crying, loving. Then, fire, plague, mutation. The Vereen emerging from the ashes of extinction, reshaped by desperation and radiation into something new, something alien. Humanity hadn't vanished. It had changed. Kael stumbled back, gasping. The Vereen were human. His words barely left his throat. All this time, they evolved from us. The mirror pulsed brighter, and through it, he saw faces. Ancestors, soldiers, children, flickering between human and Vereen forms. Lyra's voice trembled, overlapping with the echoes. They tried to forget where they came from. They burned their history. They buried their mother world. But I was born between both lights, human heart, Vereen soul. Kael reached for her, but the energy resisted him, crackling with raw force. Lyra, stop. It's tearing you apart. She turned her head slightly, eyes glowing with mirrored light. I can hear everything now, Kael. The Vereen didn't fear us because we were different. They feared us because we were their reflection. Her voice cracked as the chamber shook. Crystalline shards splintered off the mirror's edge, floating like glass tears. We were never enemies, she whispered. We were the same light, divided. The mirror's resonance reached a scream, pure, agonizing brilliance. Kael lunged, wrapping his arms around her as the structure exploded in a blinding surge. They were thrown backward, tumbling across the floor. When the light finally faded, the mirror hung shattered, fragments orbiting a single glowing core, alive, pulsing like a heart. Lyra lay still against his chest, her skin luminous with faint silver lines tracing her veins. "Lyra?" he breathed, brushing her hair from her face. Her lips moved, barely audible. "It showed me the end and the beginning. They're the same." Her hand rose weakly, fingers grazing his cheek. "You have part of it too. The human signal. The mirror woke it." Kael's pulse thundered in his ears. "What are you saying?" Her eyes fluttered open, filled with fractured light. "You were never fully human, Kael. You were made to find me." The last shard of the soul mirror drifted between them, glowing brighter, then cracked apart, releasing one final flare that engulfed the station in white. The explosion from the shattered mirror left no sound, only light. Endless, devouring light that tore through thought and memory alike. Kael's body arched as his mind was ripped open, every barrier between him and Lyra dissolving. There was no sense of touch or air, only the rush of knowing. Her laughter when she was small, the sterile room where she learned to walk by sound. The first time she tasted fear, her trembling curiosity when she first heard a human heartbeat. It all flooded him in flashes so raw, so painfully innocent, he could barely breathe. And then his own memories poured into her. The rain on Earth when he was 6, his mother's voice humming to calm him, the burning streets of the First Colony War, his failure the moment he disobeyed orders and watched his comrades die. Lyra saw it all through his soul's light, and instead of recoiling, she reached for him, inside that storm of shared existence, and whispered, "You carried pain like it was hope." The fusion deepened. Kael felt her pulse against his, their minds oscillating like twin stars caught in each other's gravity. They weren't speaking in words anymore. Their thoughts painted colors. Fire red for anger, gold for longing, violet for sorrow. He saw her love for sound, her fascination with human voices, her secret dream of seeing the sun. She saw his quiet despair, the loneliness behind his discipline. 2 lives, stripped of flesh and pride, suspended in light. For a moment, they became one heartbeat. Then came the pain. Lyra's body convulsed, her neural rig sparking violently. The shared light turned blinding, cutting across the chamber in fractured shards. Kael gasped, grabbing her as she screamed, clutching her temples. "Lyra, stay with me." But she was slipping, her consciousness unraveling like silk in fire. Through tears of light, she smiled faintly. "It's beautiful," she murmured. This is what love looks like." Kael held her tighter, terrified. "Don't you dare say goodbye." "Not yet." Her fingers brushed his chest, glowing faintly. "You showed me what it feels like to be seen. Not by eyes, but by soul." Her breathing faltered, eyes flickering between light and shadow. "If this is the price of seeing everything, I'll pay it." The station shuddered as alarms screamed. Red emergency symbols flared along the walls. Through the viewport, Kael saw them, the Vereen fleet. Black ships descending like locusts, hundreds of them, drawn by the mirror's last energy pulse. The fragments of the shattered relic drifted into orbit, each piece glowing like a dying star. He knew what they were coming for. "Commanders will take the fragments," Lyra whispered weakly. "They'll use them to rewrite memory, to erase what we saw. The war will never end." Kael's mind raced. The mirror's core still pulsed in the center of the chamber. Unstable, raw, but alive. Enough energy to power a fleet or destroy it. His communicator buzzed faintly. The resistance ship he'd left behind was scanning for extraction. "We can run," he said, voice trembling. "I can get you out. We'll hide again, like before." But she shook her head. "Kael, my frequencies are breaking down. I can't hear anymore. I can't even see you in light now." She smiled faintly, tears tracing faint silver paths across her cheeks. "But I remember your color. It sounded like fire." Outside, the first wave of Vereen soldiers breached the outer hull. Explosions rippled through the corridors. Kael stood, fury rising. "They'll take everything. They'll turn this into another weapon." He turned to the mirror core, its glow rhythmically pulsing, almost breathing. It wasn't just technology. It was life itself, humming with the echoes of humanity's past. He drew his sidearm, aiming at the stabilizer nodes. Lyra stirred weakly, sensing his intent. "If you destroy it," she whispered, "they'll never know. They'll never remember who they were." Kael knelt beside her, cupping her face. "If I don't, they'll never stop. They'll keep fighting, keep burning the truth out of the stars. You wanted to see love, Lyra. This is mine." Her lips trembled. "You sound like the dawn." He kissed her forehead, feeling her warmth fading. "If I can't save you, I'll make sure they remember you." With that, he turned toward the mirror core, firing at the control conduits. Energy flared, systems screamed. The chamber began collapsing, light folding inward. The mirror fragments outside responded, flaring brighter, resonating with the destruction. The entire station started to hum in a low, haunting frequency that echoed through space itself. Kael lifted Lyra into his arms as the floor split beneath them. Her breath came shallow now. "Kael," she murmured, "promise me, when they ask what love looked like, tell them it was this." He held her tight, whispering into her hair, "Always." Then he hit the final sequence. The soul mirror's core imploded, sending a shockwave of memory across the void. Every ship in the Varine fleet paused. Every pilot, every commander, momentarily seeing flashes of another life. Oceans, laughter, humanity. For a heartbeat, the galaxy remembered what it had forgotten. When the light faded, the derelict station was gone. Only fragments remained, drifting silently among the stars. And in that silence, a single transmission pulsed outward. A faint human voice carried on broken radio waves. Her name was Lyra. She saw what we couldn't. Then the signal went dark. The explosion consumed the stars. For one suspended instant, the entire sky turned white, so blindingly pure that it erased the boundary between heaven and metal, between flesh and fire. Kael didn't see it, not really. He felt it. The vibration of 1,000 dying engines collapsing into silence. The hum of the soul mirror's pulse tearing through the void. He clutched Lyra against his chest as the shockwave burst outward, knowing there would be no coming back from this. Her body trembled once, and then all sensation vanished. When Kael woke, there was no light, no sound but the faint hiss of oxygen and the hollow thump of his heart. The shuttle's emergency systems had somehow held together, its hull drifting through a debris field that glowed faintly beyond his useless eyes. He tried to move, pain blooming in his skull. "Lyra?" The word came out like a breathless prayer. No answer, just the distant groan of torn metal. He tried again, louder this time. "Lyra!" Silence. He stumbled through the ruined cockpit, hands scraping cold metal. His sight was gone, completely gone. Not darkness, but the absence of everything. His last vision had been the light of the mirror folding into itself, swallowing the stars. Now all that remained was void. He pressed his forehead against the bulkhead, whispering her name until his voice cracked. "You said you'd see me in the dawn." Hours passed, maybe days. The emergency rations dwindled. His sense of time dissolved, replaced by the constant ache of her absence. Sometimes he thought he could feel her, the ghost of warmth against his skin, a faint hum where her head used to rest on his shoulder. It was probably memory, maybe madness, maybe both. He should have died there, but fate, as always, had other ideas. Weeks later, though it could have been eternity, a salvage beacon picked up his drifting pod. Voices cut through static, muffled at first, then clearer. Survivor found human male, life signs weak but stable. The hatch hissed open. Hands pulled him out. He didn't resist. When he woke again, it was to the steady hum of a resistance medical bay. The air smelled cleaner. The floor gently vibrated beneath him. He turned his head toward the sound of approaching footsteps. "Lieutenant Kael Orion," a voice said, deep and respectful. "You're aboard the Vanguard. We thought you were dead." Kael's throat was dry. "Maybe I am." They didn't press. They couldn't understand what he'd lost. Not just sight, but something deeper. In the following days, he learned what the galaxy now called him. The Blind Captain. Rumors had spread fast. How he destroyed a Vereen fleet with a single act of defiance. How he unleashed the truth of the soul mirror. How his blindness was the mark of sacrifice. To the resistance, he was a symbol. To himself, he was just a man clinging to a memory. At night, he sat alone in the observation deck, listening to the distant hum of the ship's engines. The crew would sometimes find him there, facing the void as if it might answer. They spoke of rebuilding, of new hope among the colonies. But Kael didn't hear most of it. He only heard the echo that never left him, the final sound before the mirror shattered, her heartbeat. One night, while the ship drifted in silent patrol, Kael awoke to a faint warmth across his chest. It wasn't the sterile heat of machinery. It was human, familiar, a pulse. His breath caught. Lyra? No voice answered. Yet the warmth persisted, spreading through his ribs, matching the rhythm of his heart. Then, faintly, as if from somewhere deep within the walls of the ship, he heard it, an echo. Kael. He froze. The word was soft, trembling, carried not through air but through something deeper, something alive. I see you. He sat up sharply, knocking over the small data console beside his bunk. Lyra, but the room remained empty. His fingers fumbled for the wall, for proof that he hadn't gone insane. Then he felt it again, the vibration through the metal panels, gentle and rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Moments later, the lights in the corridor outside flickered. Once, twice, then began to pulse, slow, steady, perfectly synchronized with the rhythm he felt under his hand. The hum grew stronger, wrapping around him like invisible arms. Kael laughed through the tears that suddenly blurred his useless eyes. You're still here. The door slid open. A young technician stared in confusion. Sir, the ship's lights just started cycling. Engineering can't find the cause. Kael turned toward the sound, his voice trembling but steady. Don't touch the systems. She's talking. The crew exchanged uneasy looks, but they obeyed. Over the next hour, the pulses spread throughout the Vanguard, syncing with power conduits and control panels. Then, from deep space, sensors detected a faint signal, a rhythmic pattern echoing the ship's pulse. Not random, intentional. Kael stood in the command center, one hand resting on the console. Patch it through, he ordered. Static filled the speakers at first, then a low hum. The pattern matched a heartbeat, and beneath it, faint but undeniable, a voice whispered through the distortion. Kael. He closed his eyes, every nerve in his body alive. Lyra, the signal pulsed again, stronger this time. You found light in darkness. I found you. A silence followed, filled only by the trembling breaths of the crew. Some crossed themselves. Others stared in awe. Kael smiled, the kind of smile that came from somewhere deeper than joy, closer to faith. She's alive, he whispered. Somewhere in that debris field. She's alive. The communications officer's voice cracked. Captain, that field's unstable. Radiation levels are lethal. No one could survive. Kael turned his face toward the unseen stars. She's not no one. The room went quiet. Outside the viewport, the shattered remnants of the station drifted like stars reborn, glowing faintly. As the signal pulsed again, one of the fragments flared brighter, soft blue, the same hue that once glowed from Lyra's tears. Kael's heart surged. He raised his hand, reaching toward the unseen light. Lyra, he whispered, voice breaking. If you can hear me, guide me. The ship's lights flared once more, the pulse aligning perfectly with his heartbeat. The Vanguard's engines responded on their own, navigation adjusting to a new heading. The crew scrambled to regain control, but Kael just smiled, tears falling freely now. She's leading us home. For the first time since the war began, Kael felt peace. Not victory, not survival, something purer. The sense that even in the void, where stars die and empires fade, love could still echo, finding form in light and sound, refusing to disappear. As the Vanguard followed the faint signal into the drifting glow, Kael stood on the bridge, blind but seeing more clearly than ever before. In the quiet between pulses, her voice came one last time. Soft, radiant, infinite. Kael, I see you. And as the ship vanished into the starlit dark, every console light blinked in unison, beating with two hearts, one human, one alien, both burning against the silence of space. The great hall shimmered under the glass dome of the Concord Citadel, a cathedral suspended above the scarred world of Vereen Prime. Below, the planet still bore the wounds of centuries of war. Burnt continents, oceans turned silver by ash, but above, for the first time in recorded memory, the air was quiet. No orbital bombardments, no alarms, only the faint hum of rebuilt engines and the murmur of two civilizations daring to speak of peace. Kael stood near the center dais, hands folded behind his back, white cane resting against the floor. The light filtering through the dome meant nothing to him now. His eyes saw only shadows, but he felt everything else. The warmth of the sun on his face, the rhythmic vibration of human footsteps blending with the soft, deliberate steps of Vereen emissaries. It was strange, almost beautiful. Years ago, the same sound meant danger. Now it meant hope. They called him the Blind Captain, though the title made him uneasy. He'd never wanted to be a symbol, only a man trying to atone for the things he'd destroyed. When he lost his sight in the mirror's explosion, he thought he'd lost everything that mattered. Yet somehow, blindness had become a bridge, one the Vereen could understand. Many of them, too, had lost something in the long war. Their humanity, their history, their truth. The treaty ceremony began with a low chime. Voices echoed in both human and Vereen dialects, promising cooperation, unity, and remembrance. Kael listened, but his thoughts drifted to the cold dark of the station, the sound of shattering glass, and her final words, "If I can't see you, I'll still find you." He had searched for her voice in every frequency, every signal, every whisper of cosmic radiation. Sometimes, when he was alone, he swore he could hear it. A faint pulse at the edge of perception, syncing with his heartbeat. His doctors called it a neurological echo. The engineers said it was interference. But Kael knew better. It was her. Then the hall grew silent. The doors opened, and footsteps entered. Soft, deliberate, and somehow familiar. A hush fell over the assembly. The Vereen delegation murmured among themselves, their bioluminescent patterns flickering in disbelief. Even the human guards froze. A figure approached the dais, cloaked in flowing white. Her movements were slow, graceful, like she was tracing the rhythm of invisible music. Kael tilted his head, sensing a shift in the air. A warmth, a resonance. When she reached him, the crowd seemed to disappear. "You came," Kael whispered, voice trembling. The figure lifted her hood. Her eyes were sealed, not scarred, but luminous beneath thin membranes of translucent energy. The faintest light pulsed beneath her skin, following the beat of her heart. She took his hand, and the warmth that surged through him nearly brought him to his knees. "Your soul still burns," she said softly. "Lyra." His voice broke on her name. She smiled, and though he couldn't see it, he felt it. A brightness that filled the hollow places inside him. "I'm not what I was," she said. "The mirror didn't kill me. It showed me what I truly am. I don't see through eyes anymore, Kael. I see through everything that lives." He could barely breathe. "You survived." In a way. Her voice shimmered like light through water. The mirror's fragments entered the bloodstream of the galaxy, connected us. I became part of its network, half matter, half memory. I learned what the Vereen forgot, what humanity lost. He felt tears rise unbidden. "I thought I killed you." "No," she whispered. "You freed me." Around them, the crowd watched in silence as two beings, one blind, one sightless, stood at the heart of history. The diplomats forgot their speeches. The cameras kept rolling, but no one dared interrupt. Lyra reached up, pressing his palm against her chest. Beneath the glow, her heartbeat was strong, steady, real. "Do you remember what you told me?" she asked. That, if you couldn't save me, you'd make them remember me? He nodded slowly. I kept my promise. Her hand rose to his cheek. Now let me keep mine. And then, something impossible happened. The Citadel's dome filled with light, not blinding, but pure. Every sensor across the system registered an identical pulse, radiating outward from the hall. In orbit, ships of both fleets powered down instinctively, their systems syncing to the rhythm of that light. Across the galaxy, dormant mirror shards began to glow, resonating with the same frequency. Lyra's voice echoed, not through sound but through thought. They tried to evolve past feeling, past empathy, but that was their undoing. The mirror was never a weapon. It was a reminder, to see not with eyes, but with soul. Kael could feel her merging again, her consciousness brushing his. Memories flooded him. The laughter of children before the war, the first sunrise on Earth after the Exodus, the quiet hum of life in all its fragile beauty. He saw her childhood, cold laboratories, sterile walls, the loneliness of being the first hybrid, and he saw the moment she first looked at him and didn't see an enemy, but a reason to hope. His voice cracked. You'll burn yourself out doing this. She smiled again, her light growing stronger. I already did once. This time, I'm burning for both of us. The ground trembled. Outside, the stars themselves began to shift. Observatories later confirmed that the local cluster's alignment changed slightly that day, an anomaly scientists couldn't explain. But those who were there knew the truth. It wasn't the stars moving. It was life itself remembering what it was meant to be. Kael reached for her as her form began to fade, light unraveling into shimmering threads. Don't go, he whispered. I'm not going, she said. I'm becoming. Her energy wrapped around him like a living warmth. The faint hum of her heartbeat merged with his. For a heartbeat, the hall dissolved. No walls, no divisions, no war. Just two souls touching the infinite. When the light dimmed, Kael stood alone. The crowd held its breath. Then he raised his head, his blind eyes glistening, and smiled. She saw us, he said softly. All of us. Outside, the stars pulsed once more, as if answering her. From that day forward, the galaxy called it the Pulse of Two Souls. The event marked the first unified calendar shared by humans and Varine alike. Each year, on that day, both species dimmed their lights for 1 minute, to remember the blind human who saw through darkness, and the hybrid who taught them all to see without eyes. And sometimes, when the silence stretched long and the stars flickered just right, some swore they could still hear her voice carried through the static of the cosmic winds, whispering the same final words that ended the war, the grief, and the distance between two worlds. I saw you when no one else dared to.